On Wednesday, the Supreme Court is going to hear basically the Arizona immigration law that's so controversial, and they're going to decide whether it stands or not. And Rasmussen, which is a conservative polling organization, but doesn't mean that their polling isn't accurate, did a poll on this, and it turns out this is one of the few issues that the country is not progressive on. And I've said that from the very beginning. When I do the list of all the things that the country is progressive on, I say one of the few things that it's conservative on is immigration, right? And so this poll bears that out. 59% of Americans said that police should automatically check the immigration status of individuals they pull over for a traffic violation. Only 32% oppose that. That's basically the Arizona law. Now, I'm against that because I think, what are we, East Berlin? What's with the papers? And you're pulling over then basically all people you think look, or after you pulled them over, you only look at the people who look like they might be undocumented immigrants, right? And that's not the right way to go because obviously that leads to racial discrimination. Now, it might have some positive benefits. So, for example, I think a lot of people are concerned, hey, we've got too many undocumented immigrants. We've got to find a way to figure out who they are, get them out of the country, et cetera. Now, some liberals will even disagree with that. I think the moderate position is, I understand that. Look, undocumented immigrants don't have documents. They shouldn't come here illegally. I get that. This is not the best way to identify them. But nonetheless, we're losing that battle in public opinion. You got to keep it real. That's what's happening, okay? Now, one of the points that people make against undocumented immigrants is, my God, they use all these services like if they are in a car accident and we got to actually treat them so they don't bleed to death. Oh, that's taking up our money, and their kids go to school. That takes up our taxpayer dollars. They're robbing us blind. Here's the only problem with that. They do pay taxes. And someone actually did an analysis of how much taxes that they pay on average. It's, of course, an estimate, but it's a fairly logical one. It's from the Institute for Taxation and Economic Policy. And they realized, hey, you know what? They pay sales tax like everybody else because you have to. You know, you go into McDonald's, you go into a store. If there's a sales tax in that state, you're going to pay it. They don't ask you, hey, do you have papers? Oh, you don't have papers, then you don't have to pay the sales tax? No, of course, you pay the sales tax. How much is that? Well, based on their economic status, which they're not rich, on average, they would pay about $8.4 billion in sales tax. They'd pay $1.6 billion in property tax. Now, that's not very much because a lot of them don't own property, but based on the few percent that would and the renters, et cetera, you get $1.6 billion in taxes that way. And then you've got $1.2 billion in personal income taxes they're paying. And so for a total of, actually, an estimate of $11.2 billion in taxes that undocumented immigrants pay to the United States. And by the way, if they have a job through a fake Social Security number, which happens often, they actually pay the payroll tax but never get it back. They can't collect on that Social Security or Medicare, but they do pay into it their whole lives. So a lot of times they pay taxes for which they never see any return. So in the end, is it a net positive, net negative? That's hard to tell because you don't know how much of the hospitals, the firemen, cops, teachers, et cetera, that they use up. But when you hear that they don't pay any taxes and that they leech off of us, that's actually not true. They pay a lot of taxes. Now, here's who does leech off of us. Mike Elkin, Think Progress, did a brilliant comparison of the two here. General Electric made $14.2 billion in 2010. That's a lot of profit. Not only did they pay zero in U.S. taxes, they actually received $3.2 billion in tax credits. So one company makes a ton of money, but actually takes $3 billion off the American taxpayer. Whereas undocumented immigrants give $11.2 billion in taxes, and then use up services, et cetera. So who are the real leeches? And it's not just General Electric. We've shown you companies over and over again that pay no taxes. Some of the top 30 companies, no taxes, tax refunds to the tune of billions of dollars. Why? They're the ones with political pull. You think undocumented immigrants are getting politicians elected? Well, by nature, by definition, they're not, right? Because they're undocumented, they can't even vote. And they're poor. They came to get a farming job, et cetera, low-wage jobs. They don't have any money to buy politicians with, but GE, they got a ton of money to buy politicians with. So they invest a little bit in lobbying, campaign contributions, et cetera, and they've set it up so that they leech off of us. So just be accurate in how you're characterizing the different forces in our society and know who the real leeches are.